All right, this is just a video to showcase the lift and suspension that I've got on this truck in case anybody else is looking for references for what this kind of stuff looks like. So this is a 6-inch lift. This is a Fabtech lift and it's sitting on 35s. So I'm gonna go over some of the basic components here and give you an idea of how this looks. So I'm pretty happy with the Fabtech. I was considering the Pro Comp. Some people say the Pro Comp's a little bit better, but so far I've been happy with this one. So here's the new cross members. You get this little skid plate over here, which helps protect some of the stuff. There's little drop plates here for the front sway bar. Here's the rear cross member, and then you get these two big bars that come back and brace up against here, which is really nice. And yeah, it comes with all the other like little brackets and stuff that you need to help space out your brake lines and all the other wires and stuff like that. So this particular lift, I went with the Dirtlogic coilovers up front instead of spacers. And I'm really happy that I did. It rides super well. I'm really happy with these. You do have to rebuild these shocks. It kind of depends on who you ask, but I've heard 50,000 miles plus or minus. Kind of depends on how hard you're driving them. So it comes with the new big knuckle right here. All the brackets you need to space out your ABS wires and everything else. And here's about how the upper control arm's sitting. So pretty decent angles there. So in the front, it looks about like this, 6-inch lift, and then these are 35, 12.5 on 18s. And I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I think a 35 is probably the minimum size tire you'd want to put on a 6-inch lift. I think honestly, it probably looks a little bit better with 37s. I think 35s don't look bad, but anything smaller than this would start to look a little bit weird. The other thing that kind of changes stuff is whether or not you have fender flares. And I kind of like the look without fender flares, but that also will change the shape of the wheel well and then how well that wheel sits inside of it. So I've got the aftermarket bumper on here. And with this lift and this bumper, there's a lot of tires showing up front, which I like. You can definitely see that front sway bar and that new cross member down there. With this setup, you cannot retain the factory skid plate, so it does leave you a little bit vulnerable down in here in case you caught some kind of crazy tire shards or the pieces of plastic or metal like on the freeway or something. But under normal driving conditions, you'd be fine. And off-road, things are really still pretty protected up in here. So I'm not too worried about it, but you won't be able to fit that same skid plate up front. In fact, I think a lot of the aftermarket skid plates will not really work with this type of lift. So in the back, this lift from Fabtech comes with 3-inch blocks, but I decided to get rid of those and go with a set of Deaver leaf springs. Just went through a couple puddles today, so things are a little dirty. But these are the medium duty leaf springs from Deaver. Really psyched with how they worked out. They're super well made. They come with more leaves than what is on the stock leaf springs. So it allows for a little bit different compression rate. And so these leaf springs provide an additional 2 inches of lift. And then I went with the Coach Builder shackles back here. And these shackles lift another 1.5 inches. So here's another shot from the back. So there's the leaf spring sitting on the rear axle. And then the Coach Builder shackles right up in here. So altogether, it should technically be 3.5 inches of lift in the back, which is actually a little bit more. The blocks that come with this are 3 inches. And there seems to be a little bit of discrepancy on whether you want to use a 3-inch block in the back or a 4-inch block. The lifts seem to differ a little bit. I have a canopy and a rack, and I also carry other stuff in the back. So I felt like 3.5 inches was kind of the sweet spot for me. As a reference, this is a full size 35 12.5 by 18 spare. I got a matching spare back here and it does fit just fine. So it's pretty tight up against the back of the hitch, and it's pretty close clearance right here, but you definitely want to make sure you get the bolts so that the nuts are on the outside and the head of the bolt is on the inside, but it does clear just fine. There hasn't been any rubbing. And then on the passenger side, lots of clearance right there. Not an issue with any rubbing, and it clears the exhaust. This is the stock non-TRD exhaust, clears that just fine. So height-wise, in the front, from the ground to the top of the wheel well, about 42.5, and this is up front. And then for the back, from the ground to the wheel well, about 42.5, so pretty darn even. And again, like I said, I've got the canopy, and then I've also got a rhino rack up top. Sometimes I'm carrying extra water, extra gasoline, propane tank up there, so it can get weighted down a little bit. The wheels that I've got on here are a 0 offset. Stock with this truck comes with a pretty big positive offset. So with the 0, this is about perfect for me. They do bump out a little bit. For me, that feels about right. That's about what I'm looking for. I don't want anything that's poking out super aggressively far. But that wider stance, I do like that look a little bit better. But I also don't want to totally screw up my paint on the side. But this will throw like water. If you've got the window open, it'll throw water up. If you got your hand out the window, so sticks out a little bit, but I don't think it's too egregious here. So here's in the back. So 12.5 inch wide tire, 0 offset, sticking out about 2.5 inches, it looks like. And in the front, basically the same thing here, about 2.5, maybe a little bit over. I did have to end up doing a body mount chop in here. So this is chopped. The rubbing wasn't bad, but in reverse at full lock, it rubbed a little bit. And this seems to be worse if you're towing at all. And I do tow some of the time, so I decided to just get it done, and then had to do some minor plastic trimming up in here, but not too much. Overall, I'm really psyched with how this turned out. I think that, you know, a 6-inch lift feels like a lot. Seems like a lot, but with a bigger truck, you got to lift it more to get the same look. I think a 6-inch lift on a Tundra is pretty close to like a 3-inch lift on a Tacoma. I think it's about the right amount of lift for these trucks to get them looking a little more aggressive, get some more ground clearance, and it's just a lot easier to fit some bigger wheels in there. I may step up to 37s at some point in the future, but that also requires a re-gear, and I don't really want to deal with that right now. So it's something that I've thought about, but for now I'm pretty happy with this look. I also think this lift keeps it fairly functional, so you don't lose a whole lot of turning radius. With the wheels not sticking out too far, you aren't doing like excessively high wear and tear on some of those other components. And it still leaves it as like a fully functional truck, and honestly with some additional ground clearance and height, it makes it into a real beast.